Okay, it's working. Maybe just moving the screen a little bit up.
Okay. Did that help?
Or no, wait, it went away again. Hold on, wait. Okay, there it's back. It's just like somehow a little bit down.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm looking at it from my phone. Let's see if I can.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I don't know if that made it worse.
I know, this is...
Oh, okay. Maybe I can. So what if I zoom out from the browser?
Yeah, that kind of worked a little bit. Yeah. And you can scroll over.
Oh, better. A little bit. Oh, no, that didn't really help. So I'm going to zoom back in.
Yeah, it's still kind of hard to see the whole thing. Okay, that's a little bit better.
Okay.
So there's also a lag, so it's hard for me to see.
Yeah.
Like exactly what's happening.
Where is the red border here? Oh, it's so hard to see
I
this.
know, this one is the weird.
I don't know what to do. Why isn't this working? Maybe settings. No.
What does display 0 mean?
I think it's just asking like if you had a different display connected to yours, you know, if you had two computers maybe.
Oh.
It's not helping.
Yeah, go back to, okay. It's almost right. It's just like a little too far over.
What if I exit full screen?
Yeah, exit full screen. Okay, now move it, yeah, just move it up and to the right. Yeah. Drag it. Yeah, drag it up and to the right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh,
there?
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, you're too far. Just go back a little bit to the left. Yeah, that's perfect.
There? Okay.
Yep. Okay, okay, we are ready. I'm just writing. I'm also signed in somehow.
Is there anyone else viewing? Oh, I can't look.
I think there's somebody, one other person, maybe.
Okay, I'm gonna share this link really quick. Because I was gonna post it. Okay. Okay, thanks, Olivia.
No problem. Okay, I'll see you on there.
Okay,
bye. You're doing great.
Okay.
How many times can 6 go into 5?
I'm about to start streaming. Do you want to finish your homework? It's up upstairs so you can think out loud? Or you want to stay here?
Yeah, I'm going to stay.
Okay. Hold on, but you can't ask me questions because I'm going to be streaming. It means other people can hear my computer and see my screen. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me go check. I'm just going to check the Twitch really quickly. So I can watch the chats.
Mom wants.
Okay. Okay. This is okay. This is... Okay, so I can't see your guys' chats as of right now. We were having a little bit of an issue setting up the Twitch, so I'm actually streaming my entire browser. So if I try to look at the chats, it'll just keep mirroring so deep and it won't be easy to read. So I'm going to try to figure that out as we move along. So this is called Coding with p5.js. And the idea is that you can create visual and interactive art using JavaScript code. So p5.js is a library that someone out there created based on the programming language JavaScript. and they created this cool platform called p5.js, and other platforms have kind of adopted the same language, like open processing, this other tab I have open, to make cool art. So I'm actually gonna go over to open processing because they have a cool kind of library of art just to show you guys what can be made and an example of some works. So I know we got started a little late, but the agenda for today is gonna be, I'm gonna show you guys some examples. Then we're gonna talk about how the kind of layout of the graph works, and kind of understanding how the grid underlying works so that you can create stuff. And then the next we're gonna look at the reference, basically meaning the dictionary, how basically it's like a dictionary to see what words you can use and what words you can't use and how to make different shapes and what values each shape needs, etc. And then we're going to practice some steps in there. And then at the end, I'm going to give you guys kind of like a prompt, and you guys are going to try to solve it based on what we just learned. So I'm going to go start and show you guys some examples. So this is an example that somebody made, and it looks like it's like some mountains or some water or something, and you can see that the colors change as they go in each layer, and they're actually moving live. And if we click on this button, we'll be able to see the code that they created to make that art. So that's just one example. So I'm going to head back to it one more time so you guys can see it. So this one isn't necessarily interactive because it doesn't react to our mouse, but there are a bunch of those that are reactive. So for reference, if you want to go to where I'm at, it's called openprocessing.org, and it's just another web browser for the same thing we're about to do, except they kind of collect more sketches, it seems, and you can like browse them like pictures. You can also type in keywords, so I'm just going to scroll through the explore page and click on a few more to show you guys, try to find an interactive one. So actually let's look up interactive. So let's try, maybe let's try this one. So it says move/drag mouse, space key for random generation, I for FPS info. So let's do space key. So I'm clicking and hitting space, and it like creates little waves in this grid that they created. So you can make art in a way that's interactive to the user, meaning it can pick up their keystrokes, or it can pick up their mouse clicks, or it can pick up their kind of like mouse strokes and the way that their mouse moves, just like this one. I'm not clicking or hitting any buttons, I'm just moving my mouse. And then I'm going to show you guys one more example, explore sketches. I'm just going to kind of pick one that's up here on the quote-unquote explore page. So this one looks cool. So it's loading. While that loads, it would be helpful if you have a piece of paper and something to write with next to you, because in the next step, I'm going to try to explain something to you, but it'll be a lot easier if you can write it down and see it for yourself. So while this is loading, grab either a pen and a pencil. We're not going to do anything super complicated. It's just a few lines. So go ahead and grab that while we wait. Hopefully this loads pretty soon. Okay, it says move your mouse around, click to cycle through the number of octaves used. So first we're going to move our mouse around. Oh, that's cool. And then I'm going to click. Oh. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the code right here just so you guys can get a quick view of kind of what it looks like. So if you look here at the very bottom, it says number 29. So it means that this piece of art only took 29 lines of code. And you'll see by the end of this class that you're probably going to write 29 or more lines of code in this anyway. So it doesn't take a lot to make something really dynamic and cool like this. So hopefully by the end of this class, you guys will be able to make something close to this. Okay, so I'm hoping everyone has their pen and paper now. I'm going to go ahead and draw it digitally. really quickly. So basically what I want to show you guys is how the grid works. So I'm going to pull this up actually. So this gray square that you see on the right, so I'm going to give you guys the website in a second. You can go ahead and go now if you want, editor.p5js.org, or you can just wait. I'm not going to do anything on it yet that you need to follow. I'm just going to be showing you. So this gray square is our grid where we can draw things in. But in order to understand how the positioning works and like how left, how right, how up, how down to go, we need to understand kind of the number system that is working under this. So if you look here where it says ellipse, mouse X, mouse Y, 2020, all of these values mean something, especially the numbers, and that's what I'm going to try to explain to you guys right now. So let me just open a document up. This will be a lot easier if you have a pen and pencil. So just go ahead and watch. I'm going to just do a drawing. So basically how this works is think of it as a rectangle. And let me just go to scribble. And it looks like this. Okay, so for folks that are, I think, above maybe 4th or 5th grade, you guys know that this is called our x-axis, the one that goes left and right. And this one here is called our y-axis, the one that moves up and down. So for younger folks who might not know what this means, you kind of just think of it like this. Oops, that was ugly. So this is our 0 right in the top corner. And let's imagine all the way to the right, it's, where aren't you writing? It's 100. So here at 0, this might be 1, this might be 2, this might be 3, 4, etc., all the way until you get to 100. So the more right you go, the bigger your x is, okay? And the same thing for y. Up in the top left corner is our 0. This is our 0. And the more down you go, the bigger the number gets. So down here we can say maybe this is 100 as well. This isn't the real number. This is just to show you guys how it works. 100. So the more down you move, the higher your y goes, and the more right you move, the bigger your x goes. So just for example, if we wanted to make a circle the most right and the most down that we could, we would do it somewhere around here, right? And the value of x would be, according to this graph, would be 100. I don't know why it doesn't like making a 1. And the value for y would also be 100, right? So I know this might seem complicated, especially if you haven't learned graphs yet, but I think it'll be easier once we actually start doing it. I just wanted you guys to get the basis of how the graph under p5.js works, okay? So now that we've done that, maybe if you have this drawing next to you, keep it next to you. Sorry, I'm gonna move this up. Oh, that's all the up it goes. Here, I'm gonna make it a little smaller then. Okay, I'm just reading a chat that says you guys couldn't quite see the bottom of my screen. I'm hoping that fixed it. Okay, so I'm seeing that not everyone can see the bottom of my screen, but basically you're drawing a box, and the top left corner is your 0, and you have two axes, your x and your y. Your x moves left and right, and your y moves up and down. So the further away you get from the 0, the bigger your value gets, whether it's x or y. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move over and check out the reference. And like I said, the reference is kind of like a dictionary that the people who made up the language made so that other people could use it easily without having to do a bunch of trial and error. So now is when you guys should go ahead and on your browser, just type in p5.js. So I'll wait for people to get on there. And once you get, if you type this in Google, you'll get to this page, and we're going to actually click on reference. So don't go home, don't click on the first link. Click on reference. And here's the reference. So I'm just going to scroll through real quick. It gives us information about color, Gives us information about shapes, attributes, constants, environment, structure, DOM. So these are just the labels that the creator made, so it's easier to find stuff. So we're just going to start with shapes for now, because that's what our building blocks for making the kind of art that we want to make today. So these are all of our options for making shapes. We can make an arc, an ellipse, a circle, a line, a point, a quad, a rectangle, and a triangle. So let's go ahead and click on ellipse. Actually, let's go click on circle for our younger students, just to make it easier for them. So when you click on anything in the reference, it gives you a definition and it gives you an example. So here's the example. It says, draw a circle at location 3030 with a diameter of 20. And here it shows you in the colorful text, it shows you an example. So if you wanted to code a circle, you would write the word circle, parentheses, 3030 is the location, and I'll explain this more in a second, and the diameter is 20. So what if you scroll down to syntax, it explains even further what those numbers mean and how they got those numbers. So here it says circle, parentheses, x, comma, y, comma, d. So x is the x coordinate of the center of the circle, and the y is the y coordinate of the center of the circle, and d is the diameter. So that's going back to the graph that we just learned. So if you wanted something at the very top left upper corner, you would put 0, 0, because that's the closest, the smallest you can get. And in our example, where the biggest was 100, 100, if you wanted it at the most right, most bottom piece, you would write 100, 100 in the x and y. Does that not make sense to anyone? If you are not clear on that, go ahead and type in the chat just a question mark or anything to let me know that you might not understand it so I can explain it a little more. Or if everyone's on the same page, that we can move on. So if you have a question, go ahead and just type a question mark. Or if you have a specific question, type in your actual question and I'll answer it. If no one has questions, then I'm just going to go ahead and keep moving through the reference. I'm going to show you just 2 or 3 more examples and then we'll start coding. Okay. I don't think anyone posted a question, so we're going to keep moving. If I missed a question, because like I said, I can't see your chat directly, someone is checking the chat for me and letting me know. So if I miss a question, don't worry, I'll definitely see it at some point soon, and I'll answer it. Okay, so now we're going to keep moving. So that's for a circle. Oh, let me check. And then I'm just going to hit the back button, and then let's check maybe... Let's do rect. So rect. So here are some examples for a regular square, rectangle, some with rounded corners, and one that's rounded corners having the following dimensions. So kind of a weird looking rectangle. So if you scroll down, you can read more about the description. This draws a rectangle to the screen. It tells you what a rectangle is, and it tells you all of these optional parameters is what they're called, kind of like placeholders that you can fill in later if you want to make it extra. So the only one that we need is X, Y, and W. The more detailed you get, the more you can make kind of different shapes like this, like maybe with rounded corners or one corner sticking out more. So let's just stick to the basics. And this, to make a square or a rectangle, we're going to put rect, 30, which is the X, 20, which is the Y. So remember, the X and the Y are talking about the position on your actual screen. And then the last 2 numbers are the width and the height. So remember, just like a circle, if the width and the height are the same, then you get a circle. If the width and the height are different, you get kind of like an oval. So it's the same thing here. This actually is a square, even though it says rectangle. That might be confusing, but that's just because the person who made this made these last 2 values the same. So it is a square. But if you wanted it to be a rectangle, maybe this width, we could make it 30 and keep the height at 55. So it would look like a tall rectangle. Does that make sense to everybody? So if at any point you have a question, just drop, I'm sorry, I'm gonna mute that. Just drop a question mark. So I'm gonna show you just one more example. I'm actually gonna show you how to color things in. So right now we've talked about how to make shapes, but we haven't talked about how to color them in or how to get color in them. So the way to do it is to search up, so you don't have to search it, it's actually under color, and the command is called fill. So if we click on fill, here it gives you the examples again. So to fill it in black, it's just fill, the code is 51. To fill it in yellow, it's these 3 numbers. So fill takes 3 values, RGB values. So if there's any artists out there, people who use computers a lot, you know that the colors on the internet are coded by RGB, red, green, blue. So the first number is how much red you want in your color, the second number is how much green, and the last one is how much blue. So you might be wondering, how do they come up with these colors? How do they know that it's, to get yellow, it's 255, 204, and 0? So that's a great question. So what you should do is open up a new tab and type in HTML color picker. And what that brings up is a slider with all the colors out there. So you can pick a color, and then in the bottom, it actually gives you the values that you should use for your RGB. So there's RGB, CMYK, HSV, HSL. These are all different codes to make the same color for different usages and maybe different machines. We're gonna use RGB. So if I want this teal-ish color, I can move this around. So maybe I want this light teal. I would copy these numbers, and then when I am using the word fill, those are the numbers that would go inside my parentheses. So far we talked about circle, rectangle, and fill. And those are going to be our like bread and butter for this intro lesson. So we're going to work with those, and once you get those down, using all the other shapes will be easy because it's pretty much the same concept throughout everything. So let's actually start coding. So if you haven't already, can you please go to editor.p5.js.org. It should take you to a screen that looks like this. So on the left is where your code is, and on the right is your art. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to get there. I know there might be a lag on this, so I'm gonna kind of let the screen catch up as well. Okay. So then what you should do is click this checkbox, auto refresh, just so that you don't have to keep pressing play every time you make an update. It'll update automatically for you. So your screen probably looks like this actually, because I added this. So it should just have these 4 lines. So the first thing that you guys should know is this function that says setup with this stuff in it. Don't touch it. So let's go to line 4 and just press enter a bunch of times to give ourselves some space so that you know to not mess with this up here. So this is just setting up our canvas. So we don't want to mess with that. Where we want to write stuff in is in our function draw. So a quick kind of breakdown for coding and functions for people who have no idea. A function, when you're writing code, is like a keyword for a command. So every time you have the word function, it means that you're going to give a set of instructions. So this function draw means that, okay, I'm just naming my function draw, and I'm going to give you a set of instructions, and that's what it's going to be. So that might seem confusing, but it'll make sense. So in every function, there's these 2 curly braces. One that is facing the right, so it's open facing the right, and one that's open facing the left. Everything we draw has to be, right, has to be inside of those 2 things. So think of those 2 curly braces as your kind of bread on a sandwich. If you put anything outside of it, like if I write here on line 17, nothing's going to work, and it's actually going to throw you an error. So you can't write anything here because it's outside of this curly brace on line 13. So same thing here. If I try to write here, it's also going to throw an error because I'm outside of these 2 things. Anything I write has to be right in here. So it's still going to throw an error because this isn't this isn't in our reference, but this is the correct place to write. So if you put 2 slash marks before it, it'll comment it out. That means the computer just won't read it as a mistake. It'll just kind of look like text. so it won't affect your code. So let's just start here. So the first thing I want to show you guys is let's just write a circle in our screen and experiment with using our grid and making sure we understand. So let's start with our keyword. So remember, if you want, you go back to your reference. So I'm going to go back to it for you guys. So we want to go back to circle because that's what we're about to use. So it's the word circle, parentheses, and 3 numbers in the parentheses. And after each number, you have to use a comma. You'll see that if you don't, it'll just throw you an error. So you don't have to remember it. The computer will tell you. So the keyword and then the values. So let me do that. So I'm going to do circle, parentheses. Remember, the first 2 are your X and Y values. So I want mine to be somewhere in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to write 200, 200, and then for my width and height, remember for a circle, they're the same thing, so I'm going to write 50. And you'll see that it makes a white circle right in the middle of the screen. So I knew that 200, 200 was the middle because I see here that in Create Canvas, it's 400 and 400. So it just means the biggest X value is 400 and the biggest Y value is 400. So I know that the middle had to be 200. And just to practice one more thing that we learned and be able to see this better, let's fill this in with a color. So let's write the keyword fill in 2 parentheses. And I'm going to go back to my color picker and pick maybe a purplish color. So I'm going to drag it to where I want it and copy the RGB numbers. Go back to my art page. And in the parentheses, I'm just going to paste it. It already comes with the commas, so it'll work. And you can see that it colored it that same exact purple. Okay, I'm going to wait for folks to pick their color and draw their circle. I'm going to give you like 60 seconds. So pick your color on the HTML picker, copy the RGB code, and then go back to your p5.js and make sure you write it in the right place. So double check that you're writing between your curly braces. So yours might look something like this if you didn't space it out like mine, which is fine. Just make sure that all your code is in here. If you write outside of here, it's not going to work. And if you write outside of this one, it's not going to work. Also, don't mess with your background. It should be fine. So the background is just the background color. Yeah, I'm just going to leave mine. I don't even remember what it was. So I'm just going to leave it alone now. Okay, so everyone has their circle. So now that we know how to fill in colors with shapes, now let's do one more just to show you the difference. So right now, if you were to write another shape, I'm just going to do another circle. It would fill it in purple as well. And so basically any shape you write under a fill is all going to get that fill applied. So if we wanted to change the color of this smaller circle, we would have to create a new fill function. So a new fill command and refill it with different colors. So I'm going to pick like a green this time. So I'm going to copy the code, go back and paste it in. And now the second circle is different. So when you're thinking about coloring your shapes, remember that the fill goes on top of your shape. And any shape that is under a fill will get that color. So if you're wondering why all your shapes are the same color or why your colors aren't working the way you want to, go back and make sure that your fill is in the right place compared to your circle or whatever shape. Okay, cool. And I'm going to show you one more cool thing before I let you guys take it away and fill in a prompt. So the last thing I want to talk about is right now, when we're creating shapes, we're giving them static positions. So it means that they're not moving, right? So it means that no matter what you do with your mouse, these circles are always going to be there. The colors are always going to be the same. And in the beginning, I showed you guys examples of interactive art. So we're all wondering, how can we do that? And I'm going to show you, but I also want to show you the reference so you can read it. So let's see. It would be in here. So it would be in mouse. So if you scroll down in your reference to mouse, I'm going to go ahead and click on mouse X. So I'm going to just read what this says. The system variable mouse X always contains the current horizontal position or the X position of the mouse relative to 0, 0 of the canvas. So basically what this means is that instead of putting in one number that's never going to change, you can use mouse X as your X value. If you see this little animation, it does a really good example of showing you what it means. You can use this mouse X as your X value so that your whatever your shape you're choosing, it actually follows your mouse on the X axis. So you notice even if you move your mouse up and down in this animation, nothing happens because the Y is still 0. But for mouse X, it lets you move your shape around and interact with the user's mouse. So let's do a quick example. So let's do rect, just to change it up. So let's do rect. So we need an X, but this time we're going to use mouse X. So it's lowercase mouse, capital X, comma, let's see, I don't know, let's make the Y 100, and then the width and the height, I'll make them 60 and 60. So you'll see now, this square follows my mouse. But even if I move my mouse up and down, the square doesn't really follow my mouse. And that's this because, same thing as the last animation, my Y value is still just a static number, right? And if we wanted it to truly follow the mouse, who has an idea of what we could do? I'll give you a hint. It's really similar to what we did with the X. So we want to make it actually follow the mouse all the way, X and Y. So how could we do that? I know you guys haven't read the full reference, but it's really similar to what we did here. And if you can think this problem through, then it'll be easy to continue once you kind of get down how it works. So I'm going to wait and check the chat and see if you guys have any ideas. So again, the question is, right now this square is following our mouse in the X and X direction, so left and right. But if we move our mouse up and down, it's not following us up and down the screen. So the question is, how can we do that based on what we've done here? And I'm just going to go ahead and change the fill color of this rectangle to make it easy for you guys to see. Okay. So the answer to the question is there's actually another variable and it does the same thing, but it's for Y. So it's called mouse Y, and it does the same exact thing. It holds the value of the current vertical position of the mouse. So basically what that means is that the number is always changing because your mouse is always changing, right? Your mouse is always moving. So instead of trying to put a solid number, we're just going to use this variable that the creators made, which they programmed to hold our mouse value. And now you'll see that this actually follows our mouse everywhere we go, left and right and up and down. You see? Okay, cool. So I'm going to take this off just because I don't want it to follow me around while I'm trying to show you guys things, but that's how you would make it. So now this is the challenge I want to give you guys. So you guys so far know how to make all the basic shapes. We haven't gone over all of them, but they all work the same way. And a big part of this is being able to use the reference. So a big part of coding in general is kind of working by yourself and working through problems by yourself with what's called the documentation. So it's just like I said, kind of a dictionary that people made for new people to learn from. Because a lot of times when you're learning how to code, you're kind of doing it by yourself or with a bunch of other people who don't know. So the reference is a really good place to work from. So we know how to do the shapes and we know how to do the colors, right? So this is what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to create an image, so, a drawing based on the code that looks like this. So I'm going to go back to my drawing pad. Insert drawings. So I'm going to show you guys what I want you guys to make. And you guys don't necessarily have to do this. It's just an exercise to practice what we've learned and make sure that you really understand before moving on to anything else. So I want you guys to make this little figure. It's a head. With a neck. With a body. and some legs. And some buttons on his or her shirt. Okay, so I'll give you a hint. The hint is these are all made out of basic shapes that we've done actually. There's no shape that we haven't done. And then once you're done with that, I want you to color them this way. So I want the head to be red. I want the body to be blue. I'm just going to put, okay, I can write the whole word, blue. And I want the neck to be yellow. I'm just going to put Y for yellow, and the legs to be yellow. So head and neck are yellow. And buttons, you can make them whatever you want. But again, it's just an exercise to help you guys practice making your shapes, making things line up with each other, using the grid, and learning how to use the fill correctly. And once you're done with that, actually, so we'll think about that in a second. So since we're live here, I'm going to go ahead and do it along with you guys, but I want you guys to start first and see where you can get with it. So the most difficult part about this challenge is lining all the shapes up on top of each other. So the biggest hint that I will give you is that it all depends on your y-axis. I'm sorry, your x-axis and your y-axis, but the hardest thing, I guess, is your x-axis because you want to line things up, stacked up on top of each other. So a good hint is that once you make your head, whatever x you use for your head, try using that for your neck. It'll be a little bit off, but it's a good place to start so you don't have to, start all the way on the corner of the paper or something and then work your way back. Another hint that I'll say is to make sure to use your picture of the grid that you have because it's going to help a lot instead of just trying to guess and check. Okay, so let's go back to our drawing, p5.js. I'm going to erase this stuff. It might be helpful actually to leave it so you guys can reference it. So I'm actually going to leave it. So I'm going to leave it. So you guys work on that. And then while you guys are working on that, I'm going to work on some color transformations to show you guys in maybe 10 minutes when you guys are done. So if you don't want to work on this exercise, you can also just watch me do the color changes. Either way, even if you do this exercise, I'll still go through and explain it for those folks. So you can do both. It's not one or the other, but just for people who might not want to do this challenge on their own, they can just watch what I'm going to do. Okay? So, again, everyone should be working on the challenge of making this little figure. If you don't know the colors and, I keep switching back, just work on making the figure. It's a head, neck, body, and 2 legs and buttons on the shirt. It might be easy to just take a picture of it, or I'll keep switching back to it also. So while we do that, I'm going to work on something else that's cool. So actually, I'm going to delete this, but it should be okay. So the cool thing about mouse X and mouse Y is that at the end of the day, it's a number, right? To us, it looks like a word. But when the computer runs this, it's a number. That's how it's able to follow our mouse because it holds a value and it changes. But under the word, it's a number. So knowing that it's a number, we can also do other things with it. It doesn't necessarily just have to be changing the position of something. So for example, I'm going to make a square. Oh, sorry, it's called rect. So I'm just going to make a square really quick. So another cool thing we can do is that we can play with the with the colors. I'm going to make this bigger actually so it's easier to see. 70 and 70. Okay, so I'm going to go into fill. And basically what I want to show you guys is that we can use mouse X and mouse Y to change the color also dynamically. So let's just try this. Mouse X, mouse Y, and then pick a random number under 250. So I'm going to do maybe 100. And you'll see that as we move our mouse, the color of the square changes. And again, that's because mouse X and mouse Y, even though to us they look like words, they're holding a number under there. And every time we move our mouse, the number gets updated. Every time we move our mouse, the number gets updated. So that's why we can do that. So if you see, though, it kind of rotates between the same colors. It's like a yellow, a hot pink, what else? This like green. So let's try something else. So maybe put 100 in the front, mouse Y second, and mouse X third. And we should get a new set of colors. So see, now we're getting a blue, a similar green, like a purple. So maybe on the front, I'm going to add a mouse X too. So I'm just playing around with this. I don't know what's going to come from this because I've never, I didn't practice this before. But this is just to illustrate that you can really change the colors. You can change anything dynamically if you can use things like mouse X and mouse Y that change with you. So knowing that, we can also do some other cool things. So folks who are working on their figure, go ahead and keep working. You won't miss any of this. I'm going to kind of re-go over this in a second too. And you don't have to finish it all. It's just a way for you guys to practice what we're doing so that when we meet again on Wednesday, we can move forward and make other cool things and make it closer to what we saw in the examples today. So another thing that we can do is we can say, so there's something called line. It's a shape. So I'm actually going to go to the reference because I don't remember how to use it. So line is here. So the way you use line is x1, y1, x2, y2. So this might be complicated for younger students who don't know the coordinate system. If this is you, then you can go ahead and just not really think about this part. It's okay. Everyone else, so the way line works is x1 is the x-coordinate of the first point. Right here it says of the first point. Y-coordinate of the first point. So remember, a line is just connecting two dots. So that's what they mean by first point, second point. So you're making two dots on the screen, and then the program connects a line. So the first x is the x of your first point. The first y is the y of your first point. The second x is the x of your second point, and the second y is the y of your second point. So let's just make a line here really quickly. So line. So my first point, let's say it's 100, 200. Let's see what this line is going to look like. So here's my line. So once we have this line, basically what I want to show you guys is that we can also use other cool things in code to make this do cool stuff. So right now we've only worked with like things that are p5.js, meaning someone made this up just to draw. But remember I said in the beginning, p5.js is just a library or kind of like a separate version of the bigger language that's JavaScript. So even though this is its own kind of mini language, we can still use the stuff from its original language. So I know that might not make sense, but I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and practice. I haven't done this before this class, so we're going to see. So basically what I want to say is if a certain thing is true, then color it one way. Or if that thing is not true, then color it another way. So I'm actually going to comment out my line because I think it's easier if I do it with the rectangle since it's already there. And it's easier for you guys, I think, to see too. So let's say if. So what do I want to say? If mouse X is greater than 100, so ignore the, actually I think we can do this without, actually no, ignore the kind of syntax that you guys don't know yet because it's okay, and I'll explain more later, but basically I want to say if this is true, if my mouse X position is bigger than 100, do something. So what I want to do is I want to make that rectangle red. So let's try to move this. This isn't what I wanted. Okay, hold on, let's think. If my mouse X, let's maybe try a bigger number. Okay, so see here how I had to refresh it, but my mouse is here on the plane, but my mouse X value is under 200, so the rectangle is still white. But as soon as I keep moving to the right, and as soon as that mouse X is bigger than 200, it's going to go red. So let's see. Oh, there we are. So around here is the line. So let's try changing this to while. Okay, I didn't like that. Oh, maybe I think my browser's actually frozen. So what I was trying to do here is change it to while so that when I move my mouse back out, it would go back to white because it was just staying red. So I'm going to try to change it back to if. I might have to refresh because it looks like it's not responding anymore. So let me try to do that. Yeah, so it didn't like that. So I'm going to just refresh and try this again. So for the people that have been doing the challenge and trying to make their little person, does anyone have any questions about the grid or the colors or anything like that? If you do, go ahead and write it in the chat box. I'm actually just going to close this tab. It really didn't like that. So I'm going to just open a new tab. Okay, so we're back. So let me just put my rect back. So does anyone have any questions around the challenge? So I'm checking the chat, or I'm going to be sure to check the chat right now. Okay, so it looks like no one has any questions yet, which is good. So I'm going to retry what I did. So let's try again. So remember, I want to say if something is true, then do something else. If mouse X is greater than 300, so someone asked, can you see the grid lines in the canvas? I don't think there's a way to do that. I've never tried to look it up and see. There might be a way that I don't know about, but I don't think so. That's something I can look up for our next class. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this. So I got it back working. I'm saying if my mouse value is greater than 300, then fill it red. So here it's less than 300. Here it's still less than 300. Here it's still less, still less, still less. And around here is the 300 line. So that's where it turned red. And another thing we can say is we can actually just continue using mouse X and mouse Y to edit the colors. So let's refresh that. So once it crosses 300, it's not going to just fill it in red. It's going to fill it in whatever color depending on where our mouse is. You see, so it's yellow sometimes, back to white, a lighter yellow over here. So I'm going to go ahead and explain this if a little bit better so that you guys can use it too. So I'm going to write down here. Actually, you guys can't see that far. So I'm going to write under these two slashes so it doesn't mess up my code. So basically in coding, there's a bunch of different commands that you can tell the processor or your computer, right? One of them is called a condition. So you can say, if some condition happens, I want you to do something specific. If some other condition happens, do something different. So for example, I'm saying if my mouse X is greater than 300, that's my condition, do this. So this is my kind of do this section. So the syntax for that goes like this: if, parentheses, and here you write your condition. So I'm just going to write condition, but this could be any condition. If X is greater than 3, if Y is less than 100, if color is red, any condition. And then it's an opening curly brace, so meaning the mouth is facing to the right, and a closing curly brace. I like to do them together so I don't forget. So I have an opening and a closing, and I go between them with my keys, and then I press enter to open them up and make that sandwich. So remember, just like earlier I said, anything you write has to be between your two sandwich braces. It goes the same thing for any type of thing. So for any function, for any condition, for any loops. So then here you would write do the thing. So for example, mine is fill it with this color. But it could be, for example, if Y is 10, then maybe like color circle yellow. Does that make sense to people? So I know this is really new for people and it might not make sense, but it's okay because I just wanted to get your feet wet with something more difficult so that next class is not a total shock to you and it doesn't take a long time to pick up. So just remember, this is just a condition that you're telling the computer. You're just saying, hey, in case this happens, I want you to do a special thing. If it doesn't happen, then just do whatever else is on the screen. So people who have been doing the challenge, were you guys able to make your figure? So go ahead and comment if you were able to, or how far you got, or if you did it at all. I just want to get a feel for how many people did the challenge part and how many people were watching what I was doing. Okay, so while I wait for responses, I'm going to kind of round out what we did today and let you guys know that we're going to meet again on Wednesday at the same time, and we're going to pick up where we left off. So today we talked about shapes, how to create different shapes, what the different parameters mean. We talked about the grid, what the grid looks like underneath our canvas and how we use that to define where we want our shapes to be. We talked about color, where the fill keyword affects all the shapes under it, and how to pick the color from a browser. So remember, we just go to HTML color picker. And then we also talked about how to make things interactive based on the mouse. So how to use mouse X and mouse Y to use that variable that holds different numbers to do different things. Okay, cool. So I see someone responded and they did do the challenge. So that's awesome for you. Next time you're going to be really, hopefully you're going to really know what's going on and it'll be easy for you to get into the more difficult stuff and make some of the art that's more similar to what we saw in the beginning. So obviously it's our first class, so we couldn't just jump straight into that. But my goal is that by Wednesday, I'll leave you guys with the tools to make something more beautiful and more dynamic and more original. Okay? So I will see you guys on Wednesday. If you think of any questions until then, write them down, and I will answer them before we get into anything else. So last minute, does anybody have anything they want to add, say, question? One thing I didn't say, so if you want to save what you did, just create an account, sign up, and it'll let you save it next time. I didn't sign in because I didn't really want to save this, and I just forgot to sign in, honestly. So if you want to save your work, just create an account or else it won't let you. Okay? All right. I will see you guys on Wednesday.